Welcome to Between Two Pastries, a not-so-typical nutrition podcast. Nicole and Annie are licensed and registered dietitians. Join them as they discuss hot nutrition topics, challenge popular beliefs, and have a blast doing it. Here are your hosts, Nicole and Annie.
Welcome to Between Two Pastries. This is Nicole.
Hey everyone, it's Annie.
Today, Annie and I are talking about subjects that we both are like, about.
Yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable and vulnerable and
I know, and we're kind of like,
pissed off.
do we even talk about them? But yet, these things are kind of like making, making
Headlines?
media. Yeah. And
It's
so
a
anyway,
can of worms, like
well, it is. So in both things kind of go together. So, really one of the headlines was an actual banning of certain foods. So I have here new proposed California law would ban the sale of Skittles, Pez, and other candies. And again, this is a proposed law. So they're proposing it, but we don't know if that is actually going to get passed for California. And the reason for this is because what they're saying is that these particular foods have harmful additives in it. They're noting that they're linked to cancer, organ damage. I feel like that's a little strong.
That's strong.
And potential harm to the DNA. Again, and some of these additives include brominated vegetable oil, potassium bromate, titanium oxide, and red number 3.
So red number 3 is just a red dye. It's derived from petroleum, and it just gives that nice bright red color. Sometimes, and you maybe see it too, where I get cases where some people are allergic to it. I'm hit or miss on it actually being an allergy, and not feel, because remember, red dye number 3 became an issue in the, I don't know, do you remember it from the late 90s, early 2000s with people who have ADHD?
Oh, right. Yes.
Autism spectrum disorders, stuff like that. Red dye is going to make it worse.
Yes.
So my thought when I see a red dye allergy is that it's perhaps because is there even protein in it to be allergic to? Or is it more of a, you can have an allergic reaction, sure. But I think a lot of these quote unquote allergies are derived from this concept that it's going to help or hinder ADHD diagnoses.
Yeah.
So that's where red dye got its bad rap. Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
Titanium oxide, it gives a smooth texture in different products. Like it's also can be used as like a white dye as well, a colorant, titanium oxide. So that's what I know about that. What was the other one you said? You said
brominated vegetable oil and potassium bromate.
Oh, okay, potassium bromate. Well, the brominated vegetable oil is just an oil.
What makes it brominated?
It keeps that, like the bromine, it helps with that citrus flavor, like from going to the top, like separation, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what the idea is, that bromine could irritate your skin, maybe, and some membranes. They say that maybe some neurological symptoms, headache, memory loss, stuff like that.
So I guess the thing is that,
like how much?
Well, that's
what am I drinking the container?
That's what we're kind of coming down to is, and I'm not saying like, oh, a little will do no harm, go ahead. I'm not necessarily saying that, but what I'm saying is that these are ginormous claims.
Well, yeah,
and I don't even know how you can isolate that data unless you're saying, we watched 3 people live off of Skittles for a year, and this is what happened. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. Again, this goes back to remember the rat mice studies with diet soda, and it ended up being like, so they did research back in the 80s, 90s, probably even the 70s, I would think, where it was like, oh yeah, diet soda and all the the synthetic sugars are so bad and they cause cancer. Well, lo and behold, the latest research has shown that like, well, actually, you have to have 200 cans per day
Right.
for a very long period of time to
Exactly.
actually
That's right.
have any change on the cellular level.
That's right.
Now, I'm not here to say, oh, go drink all the synthetic sugar that you want. Like I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that when something in the news or even a doctor claims this product causes this most terrible, awful thing to happen, or don't eat X, it causes Y. Well,
Right.
wait a second, let's take a step back. Similar to what we've been talking about with those cancer podcasts and experts, sugar doesn't cause cancer. Synthetic sugar doesn't cause cancer. Titanium oxide isn't going to, boil your organs out of your system. Like, because that's ultimately the messaging, is that all of a sudden you're going to end up with, insides, like it's ridiculous. It's just, again, we've talked about this. It's fear mongering, and it's
right.
frustrating because people are afraid.
I know.
They're afraid. And so once you instill that fear that Skittles are bad, guess what? Guess whose life you're ruining? Your kids, because now they're not trick-or-treating, or you won't let them, or now you've started this weird food issue with a different generation.
Yep.
And again, how many Skittles are you fucking eating in a year?
Right.
To create your organ
to have your organs implode. I don't know.
Like, really?
No, well, it is kind of it is a little odd. And that's why I just feel like it's just such a huge statement, but it's also like people feel that strongly about Pez, Skittles, and whatever else that I'm like, really? I guess that's what I'm just
but never mind that rat poison and plant fertilizer that you spray all over, maybe inside on your plant, like
how about that?
shit. Never mind those chemicals.
Yes, but we're gonna start making some noise around some Skittles.
Yeah, but your Skittles, that is gonna really pose an issue for you. But again, or never mind you being cold in the winter, so you leave your exhaust running around a bunch of people in the car. Never mind the carbon monoxide pumping through people's veins. Like, that's cool. Like it's asinine. Like again, and this is why these things, these chemicals, they may in fact pose an issue. They may in fact contribute to physiological changes that might cause cancer, inflammation, whatever it might be. That doesn't necessarily mean the food is bad, number one. It doesn't mean that the manufacturer of that food is bad.
No.
But when we start to put bans just on the food things that these chemicals are in, and not the other things like clothing, things that affect our animals, plants, all of those things. When we make it about food and human consumption of this food item, to me, what this sounds like is this is a way to stop people from eating these foods.
Sure.
But if I ban them, tax them, prohibit them,
well, I mean,
therefore, these people can't get fat from at least this. This is a way to do it.
Right. And
smoking, that's no big deal.
Isn't that just what this is all about? I mean, again, it's like you just said, it's all about imposing more fear into this.
And again, I want to make it very clear. I'm not saying like, let's go lick paint cans, but what I want people to understand is like, tell me where else they're banning these things from.
Yes, I agree with you, because you're not seeing a whole lot of super passionate people talking about that on Instagram.
No, but they are really willing to get rid of the food.
Right.
Because I know food is the enemy. Food is the reason we all look the way we do, and it's a problem.
That's the whole thing. Like, this has just become another control piece or another disordered eating ploy. I mean, that's just what it is.
Do you remember that time in New York where they tried to tax soda?
Soda,
like,
yeah.
Was it any soda, or was it like McDonald's? Like, I don't remember if it was like certain sizes of soda.
It was the mega sizes from McDonald's.
Yeah, like the big sizes or whatever.
Mhm.
And I guess, I don't know, for me, as someone who goes to McDonald's not often,
Mhm.
if I want a fucking extra large of something, I'm, you know what I mean? Like, again,
Right.
I'm all for body autonomy, and like, if you make your own choices in what you
Right.
put in your body.
I
And
agree.
like, if you want a soda and maybe you drink one soda a year and that's it, like,
Right.
who the fuck cares? Who are you to say, like, I can or can't do this thing?
Right. But I also find it interesting too because it's like, um, do you honestly think that a tax on my soda is going to stop me from having a soda if I want it?
Right.
Like,
Right. No,
wow.
what you're trying to stop are the poor people and like, you're trying to make it a problem for those with, the inner city people to stop
Mhm.
having possibly the only nourishment they may have in that
Well,
day.
and that's
If
the
you think
thing is,
about inner city Milwaukee.
sure, but now isn't that an interesting concept though, that now it becomes control on another level where it's
Hmm.
like it becomes control in as far as you can't afford this. Just
Hmm.
like most all food is becoming
Oh,
unaffordable for
it's
just about anybody now.
it's awful.
Doesn't matter what their, financial situation is. I mean, it's a problem. It's really
It's a
weird.
huge problem, but it's so much of it is a status thing. And
Yes.
unfortunately, as obviously we're in the field, so we see all of these different examples
Yes.
and all of the different scenarios that can play out. Maybe we're
Mhm.
jaded, maybe we're not. But at the same time, like, people who aren't living in our world, in our shoes, they
Yes.
don't understand how incredibly um food decisions, and I mean this like on a national, let's just talk about our own nation, it's the USA, our own national level, food decisions that are made are
Mhm.
so incredibly based on status and privilege. It is awful.
It is awful.
It and again, here we are worried about Skittles and cancer in California, and
Mhm.
yet we can't, there, do you know how many people like
Yeah.
can't afford their shack of a home in California?
Right.
They can't afford the
Right.
eggs. They can't, like, the ghettos that exist out there. Again, in every state, right? There's
Mhm.
poverty. Like, we have such horrendous food insecurity in an extremely wealthy country
Mhm.
that we're worried about banning Skittles
Mhm.
because
Right.
it might hurt us, but the cigarettes are fine.
Mhm.
Again, and that's why I don't believe it's just about helping people. It's not just about cancer and
Well,
making
I
sure people are well.
I agree. I agree. It's one thing if we know that people are literally, trying to survive off of Skittles every day.
Well, who knows? Maybe that's your favoriteest dessert in the whole wide world. And again, who knows? Maybe manufacturers will go back and they'll reconfigure thing, whatever. Who knows, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's
Whatever.
fine. I mean, and that's where it kind of gets tricky because it's like, Annie and I are not saying like, "Yay for chemicals." No, we do believe that
No.
there's probably a better way of making these particular products for sure. But it's the whole purpose of, um, yeah, it just seems like such a
Right.
not. I don't know.
Well, and I
Yeah,
know, like, if we talk about Europe, they've got bans on a lot of these different types of chemicals, but they have for years as it relates to, again, everyone and their health, right? Like, it
right.
wasn't about the food item, it was presented as the chemical. So it's the chemical is not in all of these things.
Hmm.
We're not just concerned about the Skittles.
Right. It's not the specific food.
It's
It's
not
the
about the food.
chemical
It's
that
about
it
the
is.
chemical itself and all of the different things that it might be used for, right?
Right. And so, wouldn't it be more interesting if this was a proposed law against potassium bromate, titanium
Huh.
oxide, and red number three
Well,
versus Skittles? See, now that's interesting, because you do have to wonder, like, what's the real ban around when you say that? And like you were just saying.
well, titanium, cosmetics, paint, paper products,
Yeah,
some foods,
yeah,
candies, chewing gum.
right.
So who, again, and this is something we haven't really talked about. Let's talk about lobbyists, right? Like,
Hmm.
if that those paper lobbyists or the paint or, like they don't want that chemical out of their product. Now they
I
can't
know.
make a sale.
That's right.
But
That's
it's
right.
very easy to attack food because people get extremely fearful
Yep.
about food, thinking
Yep.
that food is this demon on the
Yep.
whole, making us fat and all of these things. But
100%.
like just titanium alone is
Yeah,
in
it's just
a
not going to
lot
be
of
a
things.
real.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
people aren't going to stop wearing their lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, but those Skittles I can't eat.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let it sit on my face all day.
I know.
But the two
Isn't
red
it
Skittles in
interesting?
my mini pack are.
Isn't that interesting though?
I know. I know. I just it it bothers me, and I think it bothers me most because you get a study done and immediately the media jumps on it. They find one line in it that makes their claim that something is awful,
Mm-hmm.
and then they instill fear. It's
Right.
frustrating. And
It's the
again,
same thing. Right.
the
Right. Right.
chemicals are not good, but I also, again, we talk about moderation and like
Mm-hmm.
think about a fun size Skittles.
Mm-hmm.
Really? We're gonna not let our kid have that one time a year?
I know.
They-
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and then the other, study that had come out that had just made so many huge waves that were still kind of questionable about these huge claims about, this concept of ultra processed food, um, just simply causing cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is another thing where it's this control thing. It's this fear thing where it's like, okay, that's an awfully big claim, to honestly say that this for sure causes cancer, because the thing is that it doesn't.
Right.
Food does not cause cancer, right? Now, again, what kind of studies were done to even make this claim? Again, did they follow those same three people around that all they could eat was ultra processed food for a length of time that had zero nutrition in it? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do.
If
Yeah,
you
you get that one stay-at-home mom who's writing a blog. It's a black hole of gross information that's
no, it
just
is.
all wrong.
It truly is. But this kind of just goes back to like even any of the pods that we've done in the past in regards to nutrition, but quite recently the cancer ones that we just recently had with the oncology, dietitians. And this is something that I speak with my clients a lot on when we're looking at defining health in general is um the exposure of these things.
Mm-hmm.
you know, are, is that all you're exposing your body to, or are you exposing your body to other nutrients too? I mean, you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, and I don't think we can look at demographics and say
Right.
like, well, this population who eats a lot of fruits and veggies has these cancer rates, and this population, this demographic
No,
doesn't, because there's so many factors, right?
too
Again,
many factors. And a
there's
disease
too
is a
many factors.
disease. You could be the healthiest
Right.
person in the world and get
Yeah,
cancer. Like,
correct.
these are
It
not
doesn't matter.
things that you can just like, I do all the right things, so
Right.
I'm going to be disease free. And it's like,
Right.
but it really doesn't work that way.
No. You could have the worst genetics in the world and
Hmm.
and not end up with cancer.
Right.
I
That's the
mean,
thing.
sometimes it's a big fucking crapshoot,
Yes,
especially with disease states. Sometimes, again, do your preventative stuff, which we talked about in those pods, but otherwise, like, don't be a crazy bad about it. Like,
I agree.
and that's really important because this whole concept of we can't eat processed foods and because it causes cancer because a family member had cancer. Like, whoa, take a step back. Think
Yes,
about the other implications that you're putting on a
yes,
child, a family,
yes,
yourself,
yes.
because of this crazy viewpoint that
I
you have.
know.
Instead of one of like, okay, let's take a step back and think more about this. Like, let's look at this box of rice.
Mm-hmm.
Rice has to be processed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well,
Otherwise, our
it's
body can't
inedible.
even. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Right.
can't even break it down. Let's look at this. Hey, I really like my rice seasoned
Mm-hmm.
with a seasoning pack. Great. Are you eating it every day, 10 boxes a day? No,
Right.
you probably
10
have
boxes a
a
day.
serving or
Exactly.
two
Right.
every time you have it. Is that really that bad?
No.
Now, is there a subgroup of the population that probably could cook more and have more fruits and veggies and all of those community nutrition type things? Sure.
Sure, of course.
Sure. There's a lot of people who probably have too much out of a box, and the balance is, thrown the other way.
Right.
Okay, that takes some education,
Mm-hmm.
not making them feel like they're the worst humans
And
on
that's
earth.
the thing,
That's what happens. It's awful.
it is really awful. I completely agree. Yeah.
So that's where I struggle because I obviously as teaching at the college level, I teach a lot of to-be dietitians, and some of them are very, looking at that community nutrition, and it's very kind of opposite where my brain is from a clinical standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about community nutrition where it is a lot of, hey, fruits and veggies and have your lean
Mm-hmm.
protein and let's exercise a little, and kind of this like very educational, broad nutrition type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, where I think we spend a lot more of our time is listening to people who they eat fruits and veggies. They eat whole grains. They have protein.
Mm-hmm.
They have access to hocus pocus potions that they may want, and all of the like supplements and all of the, people who can afford that and who can now worry about
Mm-hmm.
Skittles and rice and processed foods and all of the things that they think are going to cause cancer. And it's getting them back to this, like, again, central location of have fruits and vegetables, eat out of a box, eat
Mm-hmm.
candy, have
Mm-hmm.
protein, have
Mm-hmm.
grains.
Yep.
When are you hungry? When are you full? And it's really hard to rein them back in and get
Mm-hmm.
to that center point from
It's
either
true.
end, right? From either end. But if I feel like the clientele we typically work with, where you get a little bit more of that status disordered eating going on, they don't want to hear about balance. They don't want it. They
Mm-hmm.
want their claims that they've heard in the media or from wackadoodle practitioners, chiropractors, whomever, to be true.
Right. Yeah, they
And
want these extremes.
yeah,
I know. There's something very attractive about living on an extreme edge.
right.
It's weird.
It's super weird. But I
Mhm.
like, what about like how alcohol ruins and fucks up your liver? Like
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not a problem. Do you know what?
I
Again,
know.
I'm just like, I'm trying to
I
think
get
like,
it.
so we're picking and choosing
I
how
agree.
we want our body to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, food's at the top of that list is the enemy. And that's what sucks, is because food is not available to everyone.
I know. Yeah, we typically don't take necessarily I guess you could call this more of a political
Yeah, I
a
know. It
political style
is.
podcast, which we typically don't, but because these had, just recently kind of come out and we're making these major media waves, of course, we thought we would just kind of sound off on them just because, again, we know then that our clientele, potentially our listeners are hearing that stuff and immediately going, gasping,
Right.
So it's just sort of like, no, let's really talk about that, what that actually means. But anyway, hey, if you guys want to sound off at all, you know how to
Yeah.
message us. All right.
Let me
Thank
know.
you.
Have questions you want to hear discussed on the show? Find us on Facebook or visit between2pastries.com and drop us a line. Want to support the show? Find us on Patreon for exclusive content. If you love the show, find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review.